Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis will begin Mem Beis Amud Aleph, the Mishnah right at the bottom. Ha'ilfes v'ha'geder she'avir meroischen, a frying pan or pot that were removed from the fire, and they're still hot. Lo yiten aseichen tavla. You cannot put spices into it. It's a kli rishain, and it's a kli rishain which is hot, meaning it's yad soledes boy. The hand will move back from the heat, will recoil from the heat. So you can't put in spices to it because that's considered bishul. But you could put it into a bowl, or a tamchoy, Rashi says, is a large bowl. It's like a tureen. You could put it into them because that's a klisheni. So meaning the Tanakama holds that spices can be cooked in a kli rishain, but not in a klisheni. Rabbi Yehuda says you can put into anything except if it has vinegar or brine. Those things are acidic and will cause bishul easier, will cause it to cook easier. So seeing the Gemara, what is Rabbi Yehuda referring to? In Boiler, we have a Shal Rabbi Yehuda Reisha Koi, well, a Kula is Rabbi Yehuda going on the Reisha. Where the Tanakama says that spices in a kli rishain is also because it'll be cooked in a kli sheni, it's mutter. And is he going then on the reish and say lekula and says no, spices even in a kli rishain is mutter, even though other things will be cooked in a kli rishain but not spices? Is that what he means? Or is he going in the seifa and is he going l'chumra? That in the Seifa, the Tanakama says if it's a klisheni, then spices it's mutter, and perhaps Rabbi Yehuda is l'chumra, and he's saying spices even a klisheni is also. Let's bring it right at Rabbi Yehuda. Aimer lakol ilfisin hu noisen. You could put into any ilfisin, any frying pan of chol kaderas, rice hu noisen. You could put into, and these are a kli rishon. You could put it into a kli rishon. All of these things, the spices can be put in there. Except if it has vinegar or brine. So you see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda is lekula. He's saying we're mekel, that the spices are mutter even in a kli rishon. So Rav Yosef Lamemra Melach Harei Ketavla. So Rav Yosef thought to say that salt has the same din as spices. That it will cook in a kli rishon, but not in a kli sheni. He says no, salt is not like spices. That can become cooked even in a kli sheni. Who pliga the Rav Nachman, and that argues with Rav Nachman says the Amar Rav Nachman tzricha milcha bishula kibisra de Torah, because Rav Nachman says that salt has to be cooked so much, just like the meat of a shor of an ox. It requires a great amount of cooking. So according to this, that Abai said that melach is even in a klisheni can be cooked. That's not like Rav Nachman. That argues with Rav Nachman. The another version is Sav Rav Yosef Lameimar, that Rav Yosef is Sav Rav Yosef Lameimar, Melech Harei Ketavlin, that Rav Yosef held, and Melech is salt, is like spices, the Bekli Rishon Bashla, Bekli Sheni Loy Bash, that will be cooked in a Kli Rishon, but not in a Kli Sheni. Amalei Abaya, Tana Rav Chia, Melech, Ina Ketavlin, and Rav Chia says salt is not like spices, the Kli Rishon Nami Loy Bashla. It will not be cooked even in a Kli Rishon. V'hainu d'Amar Rav Nachman tzricha milcha bishula kibisra de Torah. And that's what Rav Nachman says, that melach needs bishul like so much cooking like the meat of a shor. So according to this version, that he's saying the Abai is one who's saying that melach is eina ketavlin, that it won't be cooked even in a Kli Rishon. So this is the machlokes. However, in all cases, it's important to note that we are not talking where it's on the fire. If the pot is on the fire, in any event, in all cases it will be asur to put it into the kli rishon. We're talking where the kli rishon is not on the fire. We're also talking about here by putting into liquids, by putting it into spices or the salt into solids. Then either poskim the hold that solids is considered, if it's a thick mass, it's a davar gush, and therefore will retain the heat longer, and therefore it has a din. The davar gush has a din of a kli rishon, even if it's in a kli sheni. Then in practical terms, halacha l'maisa, which is not the approach that we have to the shir. It's not dealing with halacha l'maisa, but halacha l'maisa, just some considerations that have to be taken into account are some things that are kali bishul, things that can be cooked easier, more quickly, and therefore would be also even in a kli sheni. And that's another consideration. And how we paskin l'gabi salt, and salt nowadays, which is processed already and has already been cooked in many cases. So all of these are factors to take into account. And halacha l'maisa, of course, one has to look through the Mishnah Berurah, the Sifrei Halacha, and consult a poskim. Zok the Mishnah, ein neistem kli tachas haner lekabel bayis hashemen. One cannot put on Shabbos a kli, a vessel, underneath or by the side of a burning candle, burning flame, to catch the dripping oil. He's not allowed to do that. Rashi gives two reasons why it's also. Rashi says one reason is because a kli can only be nittel letzorach davar hanittel. You can only take a kli and move it and use it for something which, for the purpose of something which it itself is mutter, is not muksa. The oil and what drips out of it, that oil is muksa. It's set aside for the candle, it's set aside for burning the candle, and one can't remove that oil from the candle additionally because that's kibui, that's muksa. That oil is muksa. You cannot move a kli, even if the kli that you're moving, a bowl or dish, is not muksa. If it's for the purpose of a dover that's muksa, it's also. So that's why it cannot be removed. The second reason Rashi gives is because you'll be mevata kli mehechana. The oil which is muksa, if it drips into that kli, now that kli is a basis l'dover also. It's a basis, it's a base for the muksa. Now the kli becomes muksa. You can't now, this bowl or this container now also becomes muksa. You cannot be mevatel a kli mehechana. Rashi gives in different places gives different reasons. One reason is because it's like boina, it's like cementing the kli there, since it can't be moved. It's like cementing it in place. So that's like boina. It's like building. Another reason Rashi gives just the opposite is soiser. You're nullifying the use of the kli. The kli cannot be used anymore, so it's like soiser. You're like destroying it. Al kolpanim, a kli cannot be, this kli cannot be moved there and brought to catch the oil on Shabbos. But nasnu mibayid yom mutter. But if it was put there mibayid yom, then it's mutter. So it's a little bit of a discussion, somewhat rather of a discussion in the Meforshim. This seems like a lashon of b'di'evet. V'im nas mibayid yom mutter. That even placing there mibayid yom, if he did, then it's mutter. But the way Tais is learning is, that means that he's allowed to do it. Mibayid yom, he's allowed to do it. He's allowed to do it if he places there mibayid yom. There's no isser b'davar. Even l'charchila it's mutter. Other learns that it's not mutter l'charchila because we're afraid that he might take the oil and use that oil. Mishnah continues, but you cannot use that oil. You can't use the oil that's collected, even if you put the vessel there mibayid yom, you cannot use the oil that's collected in that vessel because that oil is muksa. So that principle that we just mentioned, that you can't take a kli is only nittel, it can only be moved through something which is mutter, which is not muksa. Therefore, you cannot take a kli to collect in order to have the egg that's laid by the chicken fall into that's laid by the hen to fall into that kli. That also is odd because the egg, if it's the egg that's noilad on Shabbos, is muksa. That egg is muksa. And now if you have it in the kli, you're taking the kli for the tzarech of a dover, which is muksa. So that is also aval kaifa le kli shloi tishavar. But you could, the newly laid egg, you could take a kli to cover it so it doesn't get broken. Now that requires an explanation because the egg is muksa. What's the difference if you take it to collect the beya or if you're going to cover it? In either event, you are taking kli for the purpose of the egg, which is noila, which is muksa. The Tarnagoylas, normally lays the egg in an ashpa, in a place where people are discard things and people are and trample over there. But it doesn't usually lay the egg on a slope, on an incline. So therefore, to collect the egg is not really necessary, because it's not laying the egg in a place on a slope or an incline where it's going to fall and break. It's not likely to do that. So there's no real need to collect the beya in a bowl, in a container, in a kli. We're not so worried that there will be the loss, the egg will be broken. However, since it's matal, the beya and the ashpa, people trample there, people walk back and forth, there is a chashash, there is a concern that people will step on it and break it. So in order to protect the egg, we allow you to cover it. And as the Gemara says, they were mater, even though generally the principle is that en kli nitel el tzorach davar hanitel, but for a hatzola, to avoid a hefset, a loss of money, so something which is commonplace, like people stepping on the egg, they were mater. They made an exception, they were mater. But to collect the beya, which is not such a concern, it's not likely that the beya the hen will lay the beya on an incline and a slope and roll down and break. That's not so commonplace. For that, they weren't mater. They were mater for a hefset, to avoid a hefset where it's commonplace, but not when it's not mitzuyah. Esei Abaye, is that true? Vatzola shein mitzuyah lo hitiru? Were they not mater even if it's not mitzuyah, even if it's not common? Were they not mater to avoid the hefset, the loss of money? Vatanya, we learned the Bryce in this tevel. If a barrel of tevel broke, Barish Gagai on his rooftop, maybe kli umeniach tachteho, he can bring a kli to collect it. Now tevel is muksa. Tevel can't be eaten. There was no hafrasha of the trum or meisers. The trums weren't separated. That's aser ba'achila, and the person is chayiv. That's muksa. That's muksa. So, and you see, nevertheless, now l'chayra, it's not likely that a barrel will burst, and we still see that you can bring the kli to collect that tevel. So, don't you see that for atzola, even if it's not matsuya, the remater? More answers no. We're talking in a particular case, begulfi charati, where it's a new barrel, which is more common in those days. The barrels that a new one would burst. It's only after some use that it's now becomes hardened, but in the new ones it's more likely that it will burst, so therefore it is considered a commonplace. The shchichi, it's common. The begolfi charati, the shchichi, the paki, it's a new one that's more common that it will burst. You can take a kli to collect the sparks, if sparks from the nair. Now that's not so commonplace, and you see that it's still mutter to take the kli l'tzorach the nitzaitzes, the sparks which are muksa. You can take the kli l'tzorach hadover, which is muksa, even though it's leishchichi. When it's nitzaitzes namishchichi, it's also commonplace. Now, what was the havamina? So the way Taisus is learning l'chayra is the nitzaitzes are not as common as nitzaitzes are not that common. There to say that we would assume that this is commonplace. So the Gemara's assumption was, it cites this, well, you see that the havmin is that you can be the klis nittel, even the surah, to avoid a hefsid, even where it's not shchich. The Gemara answers shchich, meaning it is more common than the case of the beya on an incline. It's more common than the case of the beya. So therefore, relative to the beya, it's considered to be common. You can take a bowl, put it over the nair so the flame doesn't shoot up and catch on a beam and ignite the beam and light the fire. Now, this is also not shchiach. It's not shchiach for the flame to shoot up that high and to burn the ceiling and to burn the beam. The beam is muksa. You see, you can take something that's nittel l'tzorach davar muksa, even though it's lo shchiach, even though it's not commonplace. This potential hazard is not commonplace. Now we're talking specifically in a low ceiling, in a house that has low ceilings, then it is commonplace. It's considered, and for the purposes of this din, it is considered commonplace. V'chein, it says, it says that we can take, if a ceiling is collapsing, you can take a bedpost or a beam. You can take rather a stool or the bedpost and hold up the ceiling. So you see that you can be matal now. The ceiling is muksa, the beams on the ceiling are muksa, and you can take the kli, you can take a stool, or you can take a chair or a bedpost, and you can hold up, support the ceiling. So you see that it is nittel, the kli is nittel, it's sorach, that dover ain't a nittel, even though it's not shchiyah. The Gemara answers no. Again, we're talking in a case where it is commonplace. We're talking about shuracharati Dovid the paki. We're talking about new ones, new beams, that it's common that they will burst. So it's considered shchiach, and we maintain this principle that the kli is only nittel, l'tzorach dover on nittel, unless it's a hefsed that it's shchiach.